Hey everyone, welcome back to In Her Wallet podcast, a weekly show helping women around the world take control of their finances for good and build better financial futures one episode at a time. My name is Sofiia. I'm your host, creator behind In Her Wallet, and an accredited investment representative here in Canada. This week, we are talking about credit card debt. I think this topic is so timely during this time of the year for two reasons. First, we are at the end of October. You might have accumulated some debt throughout this year, and you want to start New Year 2024 fresh and clean without any carryover balances. So you really want to work hard for the next 2 months to pay off that debt. Second scenario is if you do not have any debt right now, or maybe very little, but with all the holiday spending, Black Friday deals, many expenses that are going to accumulate in the next couple of months, you want to make sure that if you do run in a situation when you have a carryover balance, how do you pay that off so you don't accumulate too much interest? That said, today I will go over two things you must have before you start paying off any debt. We'll go over the golden rule of credit cards. I will share with you the two proven strategies on how to quickly pay off any credit card debt. And finally, I will leave you with actionable tips on how to be a responsible credit card user so in the future you do not jeopardize your financial health and run into similar situations again. Before we get into it, guys, if you do feel like In Her Wallet podcast brings you any value at all, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and a written review if you feel like we have deserved it. You can do it on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. On Apple Podcasts platform, you scroll all the way down and you see write a review section. You can leave a rating and a written review there. What you can write there is totally up to you. You can let me know what you thought about today's episode. You can let me know about the guests you want to see on the podcast. Honestly, anything you share is very helpful and helps our show grow and helps me show up as a better host for you guys. All right, with that, let's dive into the episode. So before you start paying off any debt, whether it's big or small, there are two things you need and absolutely must, I won't be afraid to say that you must have in order to set yourself up for success from the very start. It's first having a financial safety net, aka an emergency fund, and second, it's having a clear picture and understanding of your current financial situation. Why an emergency fund? Well, having a financial safety net of approximately $1,000 will help you avoid using your credit card and falling into more debt in case unexpected expenses come up. Without an emergency fund, you may be forced to rely on your credit card in case a medical emergency, a car loan, or a job loss happen, which will obviously take away from that progress that you have made thus far with paying off your debt. And as I mentioned, it can only be $1,000. You might be thinking though, Sofiia, it will take me some time to save $1,000. Why don't I just take that money and put it towards my credit card? Because it costs me to pay for that interest rate on my loan. Look, I know it's a double-edged sword, and that is one of the main reasons why we only make it $1,000, not 2, not 3, not 6 months of your living expenses. Because if you focus solely on just paying off your credit card debt, you risk undoing all the progress you have made towards paying off that debt in case an emergency happens. Second is the budget. We need to know how much money we have coming in, how much of that money, what percentage of it is necessary to cover our expenses, and then how much money we can afford to put towards our debt. Without a budget, you might not have a clear picture of your financial situation, making it harder for us to understand how much money we can afford to use to pay down the debt. And by the way, I'm so excited to let you guys know that in just a matter of next couple of weeks, we will be dropping our very first In Her Wallet budget template. It's something I use every month, and I have been working with a real Excel guru to make it a smart engine template, meaning that it will give you recommendations on how much money you need to be allocating to certain expenses. It'll give you visual charts that will instantly help you understand your financial financial situation. It'll have a lot of auto calculations and it'll basically be the tool to make sure that you are on your path to financial well-being and success. I'm so excited for you guys to have a look at it, to get it, to start using it. So stay tuned and we'll obviously announce it here on our podcast and on Instagram. So I just want to take a quick second to recap that before we start paying off any debt, there are two things we need to have. It's to have an emergency fund of just $1,000 in case any unexpected expenses come up. And second, we need to have a budget so we know how much money we can afford to put towards our credit card debt. Next, I promised to share with you the golden rule of using credit cards. This rule is what A, helps you grow and maintain a great credit score, and second is what helps you avoid getting back into the trap of debt. And the golden rule goes as follows. Do not use more than 30% of your credit limit at any point during the month. For those of you familiar with the term credit utilization ratio, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, the way bank looks at it is if you use more than 30% of your credit limit, let's say it's 10,000 and you're using more than 3,000 at any given point during the month, the bank considers you being in the red zone. You are flagged. What does that mean? It means that the bank can report you to the credit bureau at any time without you even knowing it. It's a rule that doesn't get talked about a lot, but the one that affects your credit score significantly. Why it's so important is because, in a nutshell, the bank starts thinking that we rely heavily on the credit card and are dependent on it if we start using more than 30% of our credit limit given to us. It doesn't matter if you paid off in full every month, if you go right back in and cover that check, you just should not be using more than 30% because once you do, you're in the red zone and the bank flags you. If you're someone who uses credit card a lot, who likes to maximize the use of that credit card to make sure you take full advantage of the benefits that are offered together with that credit card, one of the best recommended ways to make sure that you do not go over that 30% limit is by paying off your credit card in full every Friday. It's simple as that. In fact, a study done by Visa found that those women who started paying off their credit cards in full every Friday saw an average increase of their credit score by 20 points. And for one woman, it went up by 119 points. So it's super effective. I feel like this strategy also has a few positive effects on the way you perceive your financial situation and really feel about it because you constantly know what your credit card balance is, because you constantly make an action towards paying it down. So every Friday, you feel more accomplished, but you also know exactly what's happening with your finances, and that definitely has a direct impact on your financial well-being. So again, the golden rule of using credit cards is to avoid the red zone and stay below 30% of your credit limit at any given point in time during the month. Now, let's finally talk about the two proven strategies to pay off your debt: the Avalanche and the Snowball method. I'm not sure who thought of these names, but I'm here for it. They kind of remind me of hockey teams, but let's go over it. So let's start with the Avalanche method. Just a quick note that both of these are best for people who have multiple sources of debt, such as credit card debt, car loan, student loan. At the end of it, once I'm done explaining both of this, which are relatively quick and simple, I'll go over a few tips for people who just have the credit card debt. But as I mentioned, let's start with the Avalanche method. When using this method, you start paying off debt that has the highest interest rate. So your first step again is to look at all of the debt and loans that you have and identify which one has the highest interest rate payable. Let's say you have a credit card with a carry forward amount of $10,000 and an interest rate of 22%. And let's say you also have a car loan with a balance of $40,000 and an interest rate of 7%. Using the Avalanche method, we will first start paying off our credit card debt because it has a higher interest rate. Let's say you have $400 to put towards debt every month based on your financial situation. So based on Avalanche, you'll be putting that towards credit card. And once that is paid off, you'll carry these $400 now towards the car loan, and you will start paying the car loan off on top of the minimum payment that you're doing every month, let's say $250. So now the payment that will be going towards your car loan is $650. Again, up until the point where that is paid off and you can move on to the next one. The key benefit of using the Avalanche method is actually you end up paying less in interest because you obviously tackle debt with the highest interest rate first. But the downside is if the balance is quite high, it will take you some time. So that's the paddle that you need to pick and choose from. Now, the snowball method is quite similar, but the difference is that rather than focusing on paying off debt with highest interest first, you instead focus on paying off debt with the lowest balance first. So again, the first thing you need to do is rank all of the debt that you carry by the amounts owing, and you start paying off debt first with the balances that are smallest. Then you take that last payment that you made and you carry that forward onto the next debt. This way, the amount that you spent on paying off that debt will increase with time. In other words, it will snowball. The key benefit of using the snowball method is that you get those small wins along the way as you go and pay off your debt one by one, from small to a little bit bigger to a little bit bigger to the largest one. Obviously, psychologically, it keeps you motivated and encouraged to continue staying on this positive, good track. The downside, though, is that this method is a bit more costly because it doesn't focus on interest rates. So it costs you more to have those psychological wins over paying off larger debt that might take longer but will decrease your interest rate payments. Again, it's a double-edged sword. It's yours to choose. This is totally personal. There is no right or wrong. You just pick which one works best for you based on your current financial situation. And again, going back to a scenario where you do not have multiple debts, you only have one credit card with carry forward amount. What do you do in that case? I've been in that situation. I have done it myself, and here are the best practices I can share with you. First, you stop using that credit card. By no means use that credit card. Just use your debit and checking account until you gain control of your money again. Second, pay more than the minimum amount. Whatever you can afford. Maybe it's $5 more, maybe it's $50 more, maybe it's $500 more. But any discretionary spending that you have, put it towards that credit card. And that way you pay less interest on it too. And finally, if you are someone who cannot afford to stop using credit card, you need to continue putting bills on it and so on, call your bank every time you reach a milestone. Let's say now you have $1,000 less to pay off. Call your bank and decrease your credit limit so you're not encouraged to spend that money again once you see it available. That way, let's say your debt is $20,000, you have paid off 18, decrease your credit limit by 2,000. That way you're not encouraged to spend it, as I mentioned. So there you have it. The proven methods for paying off debt are Avalanche and Snowball, and whichever you choose is totally up to you. It's personal choice, as I mentioned, and I would say the best way to identify which one works for you is, again, by seeing what debt you guys have, how much interest you pay, and what's best for you in the long term. The final question I want to address in this episode is, how can you be a responsible credit card user once you start paying off those debt balances, which is essential for our financial well-being and health? It's honestly simple. There are just two things. Again, it's to pay your balances in full and on time. And second, to stay below that red zone, below 30% of your total credit limit. Don't forget about the golden rule. If you pay for your credit card more frequently, like every Friday, it helps you keep your credit utilization ratio low, which is a benefit to your credit score. Well, that was it. I hope that this short but straight to the point episode was beneficial for you. If you felt like you took something new and valuable from this episode, make sure to DM me, make sure to tag me in your stories, to share this episode with your family and friends. It goes a long way and helps our podcast grow. As always, I want you to give yourself credit for showing up for yourself and your future, because every time you do that, you increase what's financially possible for you. Thank you all for being with me today, and I will see you next week.